everyone. Welcome to Political Insider. I'm Brett Smith, your humble host. Joining me today is a very special guest. He's an American actor in TV and film, a producer, and now a director. He's also a father, probably known best for his portrayal as the big blue Boy Scout Superman on the wildly popular TV series Lois and Clark. Dean Cain, welcome, brother.
Welcome. I'm happy to be here. Thank you. And very humble. I like that. Humble is a great word and not used enough these days.
I'm the humblest of all hosts. You know, people will learn that as they watch more videos. So you got a new movie out called Trafficked, A Parent's Worst Nightmare. It co-stars Christy Swanson. I watched it last night. I was able to rent it on Prime Video. You can also purchase it there. I liked it. It's a very tough subject matter, but I thought it was one that is worthwhile tackling, especially given what's going on at the border and everything right now. The story is of a 16-year-old middle-class girl, and she's got a very bright future. She sneaks out at night on her 16th birthday to meet up with a boyfriend who she's only spoken to via text. Never seen this guy. So this guy catfishes her, and then she is basically abducted by sex traffickers and forced into prostitution. You play a private investigator, a vet, a Marine with a kind of a checkered past, which I liked because it made the character very relatable. Her parents hire you to find her. And, you know, like I said, this is a tough subject, but tell us why it's important. Tell us about the movie and also why it's important that we kind of face the reality of sex trafficking in America right now.
Well, the film was actually a very small film, very little film. It was just very well done. They did a really nice job. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. That's where we shot. Nice. We shot in Michigan, and it was great. And it has that grit to it, you know, and those houses are real, the real deal. And that sort of rundown stuff is all over Detroit, unfortunately. Yeah. And a small film with a great idea. The story is a story that people don't really, it's ugly. And it's the ugly truth is it's all over here in America, you know, next door neighbors all over the place. Sex trafficking and human trafficking is huge. It's gigantic business. I'm actually a real life police officer as well. I'm a reserve police officer in Pocatello, Idaho, and I'm a sheriff deputy in Frederick County, Virginia. And part of what I work with is the ICAC groups, the Internet Crimes Against Children. I did the film first. And then I got more involved as a police officer and as a law enforcement officer. And the truth is, you know, it's everywhere. It's all over the place. And our certain units that we have, we know who a lot of the predators are, and you have to sort of set them up. You know, we have officers who are like, I'm having a relationship with so-and-so and so-and-so because it's an online relationship. Mm-hmm. That stuff exists. And for our kids, my son is now 20, so he's not so susceptible to that. But that's how people are reaching out, and they're in your bedrooms and they're in your houses, and it's just a really terrifying thing when you look at how the access that these predators have to your children at your house. You may think you're paying attention, it scoots by. So you have to, you know, look at your kids' phones. You got to know who they're talking to. You have to be this sort of helicopter parent because this problem really exists all over the place. My character in the film, what I liked about him is, you know, he gets it done, and he may be a little unscrupulous, but he'll get it done, and he'll do it in the way that, you know, as a parent, I would like to think I could exact some of that sort of revenge on some of the bad guys who do these bad things. That's the sheepdog in me, and that exists and lives. So it was a great fun to play the character. I enjoyed the heck out of the character, and him doing some of the somewhat unscrupulous things that he does in the film.
Yeah, he's private investigator, so not a cop, not a marshal. So there's probably a little bit of leeway in there that he has.
A little fungible gray area.
Yeah, exactly. But I like it. I like the protagonist because he was he's kind of the classic stoic tough guy, which is what the kind of characters and heroes that you and I grew up on. The parents I found very naive, which I thought added a very realistic element to the whole thing. They kind of let it go when she disappears in the beginning for a while, and I don't know if my parents would have reacted that necessarily in that same way, but I think that these days, I think a lot of parents do. I think there's kind of a hands-off approach. And that might have worked when we were growing up, but man, I don't know. I don't think that works today. You know, some of the things you learn in this film is close to 1 million people in the US are victims of sex trafficking, and it's a $150 billion industry. And that's happening in America. Which is, terrifying. Talk about some of the real life guys out there, like the guy you portray working to rescue children, like the girl Allison in the film, who's abducted and forced into prostitution. Are these guys making a difference? And how can the public help? What can we do?
Yeah, certainly these guys are making a difference. There are a lot of guys that are off the radar who can't, I do it through law enforcement because I'm a law enforcement officer. But if I wasn't and I had an opportunity to do something, I'd certainly put my resources behind it. I know a lot of people who do this who are not law enforcement, and they do it. They'll tell you, can they make a difference? Yeah. If you save one person, you've made a difference. And they're saving a lot more than one person. And they tend to know who the bad guys are. Excuse me. I'm vaccinated. I can't even.
Super spreader.
They tend to know who the bad guys are.
Mask. I need my mask.
They know who these bad guys are, and they allow them to exist so that they can get other people. And there's just it's so convoluted. It's crazy. But it's just all over the world. And your children, whoever's listening to this, I'm telling you right now, your child, be it male or female, tall, short, it doesn't matter. Your child is at risk and really needs to pay attention to this. And you as a parent need to be vigilant, completely vigilant, because it's everywhere.
Yeah, you and I are both Gen Xers. We grew up in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, and we had Stranger Danger and we had McGruff the Crime Dog. We goofed on it back then, and we kind of goof on it now. But the more I kind of think about it, it did give us kids some semblance of kind of situational awareness, understanding, kind of what's going on around you, your surroundings, and certain things to look for that are sort of like red flags.
Ding, ding, ding.
I had one incident as a kid where I had some strange dude trying to flag me down on the street, and I was outside of a store. My mom was inside, and I just ran inside the store and grabbed her. I was probably like 7. But it was a stranger danger PSAs that kind of freaked me out as a kid, which means that they were effective.
Yeah.
They were effective. But these days it's very different, obviously. As a parent today, they're far more vulnerable than we were at the same age. But you're a parent, you got boys. I know they're older, but for people out there with parents, how do you handle this? How do you kind of balance, your kid's privacy with knowing what's going on, or not just being, having your head in the sand, basically?
It's a tough question, but my answer is they don't get privacy, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But this is you don't get privacy. Also, when you talk about drugs and things of that nature, you have to go through your kid's backpack. You have to go through the kid's backpack. I told my son when he was growing up, listen, if I try to grab your phone or your computer or log on to something and I don't know the password, it either swims or it flies. It's gone. Because if I can't get into it, we got a problem. If you're hiding something from me, we got a problem. And so we went through that a few times, and lo and behold, there was a time where he was doing stuff that was wrong, but it was very obvious to me because he changed his behavior and he changed some things and turned off an app that where I was tracking him. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I just don't want you to know where I am. I'm like, but no. Yeah. Excuse me. It's very obvious you're doing something wrong if you don't want me to know where you are. And now he's like, here's where I am, Dad. We track everything. We got everything going on. And it's a whole different ball of wax. But you need to do that. The kids, I'm sorry, you're under 18. You don't deserve the privacy. You can earn some privacy, but those things, you're a target, and it's hard to explain to your kid. They'll resent you for it to some degree, but they'll also love you for it. And that resentment's fine. You can deal with it if you're a parent.
I had some of that resentment, and I didn't grow up with the social media or driving under, 7 cameras on the way to Circle K or something, I mean, it's such a different world. You and I really grew up in kind of this Wild West. We were talking off air. It's sort of like we're the last of the free range childhood.
Come in. I want you home by dark. That's about it.
Make sure you're home by the time the street lights come on.
That is.
Yeah.
You see the lights and you'd be getting home. We didn't have lights where I grew up, but still.
Well, and then in high school for me, it was call at 10:30, 10:45. Let us know where you are and when you're going to be home. And my curfew was usually around midnight. I don't think I ever really pushed it past that. But I learned really early on, that it really does bother your parents when you don't call. Because I only had to learn that once. and if you call and you check in, you get all kinds of freedom. You know, you get
That's
all kinds
the truth.
Yeah. So I mean,
Huge freedom. You've earned it.
Well, yeah, and it's like you said, you earn some privacy, and I earned some privacy too. But I, you know, I don't remember having total privacy when I lived at home. I don't think you should have.
No.
You know, if you want that, that's the incentive to move out at 18.
Bing, bing, bing. There you go. And at 18, I did. I went to college.
Yeah.
And I left, and I never moved back home with my parents. Now, they've since kind of sometimes move in with me. That's a whole nother story. but I don't get any privacy then either.
Right. It reverts right back to the way it was when you guys were in the house. I know what that's like. It happens every time I go to Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas. So, and no, your parents never stop looking at you like I mean, you're the baby forever, basically. So, yep. You know, you know, this movie as well, you know, you've got, you know, I was just thinking about just all the apps, you know, all of the online dating. There's so many opportunities for people to mask who they are or pretend to be something they're not. And I'm not just talking about, you know, lying about your age on a dating app or lying about your height on a dating app. The catfish element of this movie is something kind of new. I didn't even know what catfishing was until a friend of mine maybe a couple of years ago clued me in. MTV has a show about it.
Yes, they do. And I've watched it. That's where I learned what catfishing was. I'm like, what's catfishing? You know, you catch catfish.
Yeah, my friend Lisa was like, "You've never seen that show?" I was like, but it's you know, that's kind of playful. This is scary stuff. You know,
terrifying.
You're talking to somebody who's got this completely and totally alternative photo, and I mean, they're not even the same person.
Not even close.
And this girl, you know, basically sneaks out of the house at night and goes and jumps in with this car. And you can tell when she jumps in the car, she's kind of like, okay, you're so-and-so, you know, it's the pictures might have been somewhat similar, but not really. And you can tell that she's kind of put off by that. But I just think to myself, as a parent, I mean, how do you double check this stuff? How do you know who your daughter's dating?
It's incredibly difficult, I think. You know, it's even so I have two godchildren. They're 10, and my niece is also 10, and they all run around together. But I talk to their parents and I talk to the kids all the time about the influences they're getting online. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. And one of the big things, you know, it's even video games. If you're playing video games on the Xbox and your headphones are on, you're talking to people and you develop sort of relationships like that. And you have to explain to these kids that they should never give up their real information, their real name. Your gamer tag is one thing. You don't use your real name. You don't tell them where you live. You don't tell them anything about you, because these are professionals. They are professionals. And you've developed this class of professional fraudsters who do this for a living. It's the catfishers and things, because they develop this online persona and they want to be that person. Excuse me.
Yeah. Well, you've got
coming off of a bad cough. It's a head cold. I got tested. Being vaccinated and then having this, I was like, I can't. It couldn't happen to me, and it didn't. I got a head cold, which is weird.
No, but you know what's weird is you know, you've got the you know, you got the sex traffickers in the movie, but you've got this guy, this dude who kind of lures her out. And I was thinking to myself, you kind of got, you know, two professionals here. You obviously got the bait and the hook, which is this guy, and he does it for cash. You know, I mean, when he drops this girl off, you know, he gets a big wad of cash, and then these pimps come out and kidnap this girl. So, and that, you know, and then throughout the movie, they're also feeding her OxyContin. All these girls, all of these women who live in these drop houses. You know, we have them out here in Arizona. I'm in Tucson, but you know, the border. One of the things that they never really talk about is the coyotes will truck a bunch of people, usually women. They'll drop them in a drop house somewhere up in Phoenix or Scottsdale. You know, it could be the house right next door to you.
Right.
And they you know, and they pimp these girls out. And then they extort money from their families back in Mexico or Honduras or wherever they come from. Most of them don't come from Mexico. If you talk to Border Patrol, they call them OTMs, other than Mexicans. That's the plurality which is coming across. But it you know, it made me think about all this stuff. Living in a border state, you know, we deal with this all the time. It's nothing new. And then when the media shows up, they're like, "Look what's happening." It's like, yeah, it's been happening for like 25 years. Where have you guys been?
Welcome to the party.
Yeah. Right. Or John McClane, exactly. But you know, it's something that nobody really talks about, because it's kind of under the radar. You don't know that you know, that house that was built by Pulte in that nice neighborhood has a dozen girls in it stashed, being held against their will, and they're being forced into prostitution. It's terrifying.
It is awful. That's the kind of thing where vigilant neighbors and people just in general being vigilant can help out.
Yeah.
And that's what people don't understand, is like that it can be the house next door. It probably is it's definitely the house next door to somebody.
Yeah.
So if you're vigilant and you're watching and you see something that doesn't seem right and you make a report to law enforcement, that means a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Something else.
Help a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I've gotten
Don't start me on the border, by the way. The border, which is that because I'll go berserk on that. The idea that you don't have a border wall, we don't have border security, is insanity. It's literal insanity. And yes, I lock my door at night. Yes, I'm prepared if there were armed intruders coming into my home. I'm an officer. Even if I wasn't, I'm prepared. But that's the same thing with a border. I can't think of any other country, and I travel a lot, where I don't have to go through immigration every single time.
We've got a wall around the Capitol right now and it looks like East Berlin. I mean, they just proved that walls and cages and razor wire do keep people out, maybe the wrong people, but
yeah, it's supposed to be the people's house. We got to finish the wall on the border and take the wall down around the Capitol, no question.
It's just such beautiful symmetry.
It is. You could make a graphic novel out of it, but nobody would believe you.
What? One of the things I was going to ask you, and it's something about the movie, is this a film that parents can sit down and watch with maybe 13 and up?
It's a little tough, but yes, you should. It's just the way that Stranger Danger or Dog McGruff maybe made you feel a little funky. Be aware of that. They're innocent children, and you don't want to scar them, but you have to alert them to the necessary dangers. It's an ugly world out there very often, and you need to make them aware. And I think that if parents can watch this with their kids, I encourage it. It's a little hard. You'll have some tough conversations, but they're very important.
Yeah, I mean, I think about some of the stuff that I saw, before I was 13 in the 80s, and movies like Red Dawn, Conan the Barbarian, and others. These were all probably movies that I shouldn't have been watching, but thanks to oh yeah, boy, everybody's talking about that movie now, let me tell you. But thanks to the advent of cable, these were all accessible to 9, 10, 11-year-old boy. I kind of think that sometimes these films can help us grow up and be prepared for life. You and I, our generation, it's been said it had the least amount of adult supervision, the least amount of adult nurturing. I kind of, and sometimes I hear Gen Xers sort of lament that, and I think to myself, yeah, but we learned all these skills a lot earlier on. We learned how to kind of navigate life and kind of grow up a little bit faster. And frankly, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Sometimes I kind of scoff at adults who say that children need this prolonged adolescence, and I'm kind of like, well, how does that prepare them for life? I don't have kids, so I can say that, but but at the same time, I think sitting down with your kid and watching this movie, which has some action, and it's also got mystery, and there's trying to solve a crime, and it's got a cat and mouse element to it, which I liked, and it's got good acting. I just think that this is something that you could probably get a kid to sit and watch.
Sure, it's
not preachy, it's not forced. It works very nicely. It's a small movie, but at the same time, sometimes those are the best because they force great performances out of people. And Christy was really good.
Christy's fantastic in it. Yeah. It's not a cookie cutter studio film, so we can do things a little bit differently at that size, and things that a studio wouldn't do because it's either not PC or or a little risque or a little too real.
Christy had probably the heavy lifting because she's doing all the emotional stuff, and I like the fact that she loses faith in you and in the entire thing. And there's a point where, and this was the other thing that I found fascinating: the criminal knows how to game the system. At one point in the movie, the pimp forces all the girls, to call home, and I was sitting there thinking to myself, why would he do that? And then it dawned on me: that's to get the cops off the trail.
Yep.
Hey, Mom, I'm in so-and-so with my boyfriend and everything's great. Click. And then you Yeah, exactly. So cops are automatically done, and it made me think about Daily Wire's film Run, Hide, Fight. The criminals in that also gamed the system. They knew the response times, and they used all this stuff against the cops. And it just goes to show you that these criminals, these are not stupid people. They might not be super smart, but they're really cunning, man, and they know how to outfox and compete with law enforcement, even the best.
Well, sure. You look at anybody. You look at the prison system. People who are in prison, they have their own. They're smuggling drugs in and out. I mean, it's a prison.
Yeah.
How you get drugs in and out? How you run a drug cartel from the prison? Do it all the time. So they're very crafty. They have a lot of time on their hands. They can figure it out. There's obviously ways to exploit the system, and criminals do it to their advantage all the time. Yes, you have some real boneheads, but you also have some pretty sophisticated bad guys. And once they've figured it out, they'll keep doing it, and move a little here, move a little there, and they're very slippery. And it's a unfortunate cat and mouse game for real.
Mm-hmm. Well, and these guys also like, and I learned so much about the traffickers from this movie. They'll once they kind of start to smell the cops on their trail, they'll just shut down and move to another city.
Sure, they've got a network.
Yeah,
they're trading girls back and forth. There's too much heat on this girl. Give me a couple girls. They're making a trade in the middle of it, like they're trading, livestock, because that's what they see them as.
This movie reminded me of The Last Sicario. And those Sicario movies are fantastic because they're very right of center. It seems like the only guy in Hollywood outside of Clint that can do right of center movies and actually get money is Taylor Sheridan these days. I don't know his politics, but I'm just looking at his writing and I just think to myself, this Texas ranch kid seems to write for middle America pretty well. Because this movie kind of reminded me of Wind River, which talks about Native American women who disappear every year and are never found. Good movie, small movie from Taylor with Jeremy Renner. But again, you're tackling kind of a touchy subject through entertainment and bringing people's focus to it in a way that is not through some public service announcement. And that's why I think it's great that parents can sit down, families can sit down and watch this stuff and be entertained, but also get something tangible out of it that they can apply to life. And it's got our ethos and our ideas and our values baked into the characters and into the story. It's fantastic. So.
Yeah, and any kid, especially your kids that are 13 or 14 in that ballpark, watching this with them, I think is hugely important because it illustrates to them how easy it can happen, how easily these things can happen, and what kind of dangers to look out for. If it just makes them a little bit more apprehensive, a little bit more vigilant, victory.
Yeah, absolutely. That and also time is of the essence when something like this happens. And and the other thing I learned was it's got to be 48 hours for the cops to do a missing persons. And man, 48 hours, that's an eternity.
Oh yeah, I could have you in Russia.
That was just kind of blew my mind. I was just sort of like, wow, if anything, this movie is going to teach people to be more self-reliant and have a plan. Have a plan in place. Don't rely on the cops. Don't rely on that 1.5, 2-minute response time if somebody's kicking in your door, or if your kid's getting, if your kid's texting some weirdo. Have a plan.
Have a plan.
Yeah.
Have discussed it too, and have talked about it beforehand, and be ready because it shocks everybody. Yeah. My son, who I taught to be very vigilant about everything, found himself in a situation. He goes to school in North Carolina, where he was approached by his vehicle. He parked far away from the normal place he normally parks for some reason. And then he got approached, and it happened so fast to him, he caught himself like stuck. He wasn't ready. And I said, it's a perfect example for you, buddy, because you didn't look around. You didn't scope out your area. You could have avoided that. If you'd have seen that guy and if he had seemed a little sketchy, you just drive around, park in a different place that's closer. And those little things can make all the difference in the world because it's crime of opportunity. Sometimes people are planning things. But then I said, as it happened, he actually called me just afterward, and I had him say something to the folks inside, and that saying something makes a big difference. And then
get it on record. Build a case. Yes.
And the kid was identified, and there was a problem.
Yeah. It's so weird. You got to do all this stuff today. That you and I. This is not stuff that we had to navigate or encounter really.
No, and it wasn't in our bedrooms. You know what I mean? It wasn't in your. It happens right here.
Yeah.
Heck, my credit card got stolen yesterday. Never
Did it
happened.
really?
Yeah, I was like, what? I didn't make it. I didn't make a purchase at Walmart and do this thing, and it was like, nope. My son didn't do it either, and so that thing had to get canceled. I don't know where it came from, but you have all these things going on. You have to be very vigilant. There's a lot of predators out there.
Well, and those guys that stole your card probably had no idea that it was your card either. I mean, that's the other thing.
It's a number and a purchase.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. I mean, those guys could probably be in like Ukraine or something like that.
Probably are.
Yeah. So anyway, I just want to encourage everyone to check out Trafficked, especially if you have kids. You can find it on Amazon for rental or for digital purpose or purchase. But like we were talking about off air, go buy a hard copy. Okay, don't rely on the cloud, because they're going to cancel things on the cloud. They're going to wipe things out. And so far, conservative creators have been pretty good at getting stuff on Amazon. Amanda Milius was able to get Plot Against the President on there. Gosnell is on there. Nick's been able to get his stuff. So, for now, we're able to get that stuff up there for now. But buy a hard copy, because it's a good thing to have on hand just in case they want to, basically wipe it clean.
It's so 1984. It's scary.
Buy a hard copy and hide it in your wall.
I mean, you have to. What's he got in there? He's got a bunch of Blu-rays and DVDs. Oh my God, let's get him out of there.
I know John Nolte and I, we've been encouraging everybody to, with your Biden bucks, your Trump bucks, buy guns and ammo and buy Blu-rays of all your favorite movies, all your favorite comedies, because they're going to be canceled at some point. So
they are going to be gone.
Let's shift gears. You've got another project you're working on, and this is your directorial debut, which that's a big deal, dude. I mean, you've been an actor, you've been a producer, and now you're stepping behind the camera. It's called Little Angels. I have absolutely no idea what it's about, which is but the green light, you got the green light today. As
green light, it's fully financed, ready to go. We actually shot a little bit of it already during a football game, because it had to take place during a football game. There's parts of it. The story is basically, excuse me, it's the Mighty Ducks. It's Bad News Bears.
Okay.
And it deals with but girls soccer, like 12-year-old girls soccer.
Nice.
My character is like a Nick Saban, college football coach who's just a winner and always has been, and has his way of coaching. And he's a bit of a dinosaur, kind of like Mr. Lawrence in Johnny Lawrence in Cobra Kai. Yeah. He's a little bit of a dinosaur in that he says things that maybe he shouldn't say, and he gets in trouble for it, and he has to coach these girls. And that's the crux of the story. But there's so much fun that happens. Again, my 10-year-old niece and my goddaughter, they played, soccer against each other in real life. Mm-hmm. In fact, they got the championship game. It goes to overtime, and each one is in goal. So in overtime, one of them's going to be happy, one of them's going to be horribly sad.
What are the odds there, man? Come on.
I was in a no-win situation. I was like, oh no, there's not going to be a tie. No. So one of them is going to lose, and they're going to give up the goal, because it has to happen that way.
Yeah,
and it happened, and my goddaughter got scored on, and I immediately went to her, and she was just bawling. And I was, I talked to her for a little bit. It's okay. It was a great shot. It happens. This is why you play the games. And next time you won't let that happen. And then my niece, who won, came over, and they were all talking. I took them. They got ice cream. Everything was fine.
Yep. Yeah, man. It's you live to fight another day. I mean, you learn a lot from losing. I mean, that's kind of the thing. I mean, you can learn a lot from winning, but at the same time, sometimes you got to go down in order to rise back up, and rising back up makes you stronger and more prepared next time.
Get knocked down 6 times, get up 7. That's just the way it is. And that's life. I always use sports as a metaphor for life. And it always has been. As a football player, there's always somebody bigger, faster, stronger. Yeah. I can be more prepared. I can get out of position. I can get in position. There's things you can do. Yeah. And it really is. And that's why I'm not a big proponent of participation trophies. Forget it. Way to go. You're on the team. It's great. We're all a team. Here's the team photo. You got that. But there's one person who's going to be the most valuable player. And there's one person who's going to be the most improved player. And that's just the way it is. And I've done the speeches giving the kids their trophies and their things and stuff. Yes, and participation trophies, because a lot of them do warrant that. I mean, they mandate it. And so we have to do it.
It's one of those things where I remember being on like a really bad soccer team as a kid, and you get your butt kicked, and then you do the good game as you walk past each other and you're about to take off and go home. And I remember just being that used to grind me. I used to be so mad sitting there, oh, good game. And I sometimes I'd sit there and I'd be like, yeah, right. Because it wasn't a good game. We got our butts kicked. But there was an impetus there in that frustration to come back next week and kick some butt. And we're going to be the winners next time. And that's that competitive spirit that only comes from either winning or losing. And then, there's nothing there in the middle. And, again, we had this free range childhood. That's an element that the kids today need more of, which is how to deal with winning, but also losing, because it's part of life. Part of life is starting over. I don't care whether you're 25, 35, 45, or 55.
It happens 5, 6, 8 times in your lifetime, all the time. Yeah. I mean, I graduated college, played in the NFL, going to school and playing sports, the things I did so well. Within a 4-month period of time, both were done.
Yeah.
I graduated, got to the NFL, got hurt. I'm done.
Yeah.
Start over. You're 22.
Yeah.
I have to change all my thinking. And that happens over and over again.
Yep.
Kids come into your life. You lose family members. It's always a new beginning. So you always have to pick yourself back up and get going. And that's the wonderful metaphor for sports. And it really is.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited for this movie because it's just got a lot of fun moments and good lessons for
I love the idea. One of the things I love about Cobra Kai so much is the headbutting between Gen X. There's really no boomers in that show. It's pretty much, and there's really no millennials. Johnny and Ralph are both Gen Xers, and the kids in the movie are all Gen Y. I mean, we forget that the millennials they're all approaching 40.
Whoa!
So yeah, what? Man. Yeah, they're all in their late 30s now. I think the oldest millennials are like in their early 30s.
Wow.
Yeah, man. So you can't really make those millennial jokes with the young kids anymore because they're not. They're Gen Zers.
Wow.
But at the same time, a lot of the same kind of personality traits and things that the millennials have, the Gen Zers have. But I love the idea of a dynamic between a Gen Xer coming in and kind of being unvarnished and being kind of rough and tumble, saying things that maybe get them upset. It's the same way with Cobra Kai. But at the same time, what I like about that show is that the kids, they man up, they get tough. Johnny has a very positive influence on them. They also have a positive influence on him. They kind of soften some of his hard edges, which I liked a lot. It's reciprocal, but moreover, it's really about getting these babies to kind of grow up, and man up. And that used to be something we used to be able to say, man up, cowboy up,
Oh
now I'm sexist.
Yeah, you can't say that. I know, be a man.
Right.
That's an awful thing to say to someone. It's like the concept is the concept, and you're going to get knocked down, so you have to know how to get back up, whether you're a man or a woman. My son's a fighter. He's a jiu-jitsu guy.
Nice.
And before he fought his first real tournament where he's really fighting, I was terrified because I didn't know if he had the heart.
Yeah.
He had to do 5 matches in this one day. Some as a kid, and then he also fought adults too. And,
wow.
He ended up, in different classes. And he was so tired after his 3rd match. I laid him in the back of my truck and I'm massaging his legs and he falls asleep. He's dead ass asleep because he's exhausted and he's got 2 more fights. And I'm getting food into him and water because I know how to do all this of having been an athlete forever. I'm like, you got to drink, you got to rest, you got to do this. And he did all the things. And he goes in there and he was just getting pile drived in this one match. Pile drive. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, come on, buddy. Just don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up. And from down below, he got a lock, boom, flipped it, boom. And he tapped this 30-year-old man. And I can't even tell you. To know he had the heart to keep fighting, even though he was exhausted, completely pretzeled up, and then to make a move there and win the damn thing. That was when I knew my son was going to be just fine in this life. And he has been, and he's doing great.
Have you seen the David Mamet movie Redbelt?
No.
It's very good. I
love David Mamet. He does great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, some people kind of have an issue with some of his dialogue, but at the same time, he is a conservative creator. He is a right-of-center guy. 9/11 really changed him. Redbelt, I've always kind of felt is sort of a little bit. It's about MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but it's kind of a love letter, I think, to conservatism because it's really about principles and adhering and sticking to your principles and your ethos and your philosophy. But it's got some fantastic jiu-jitsu fight scenes in it and whatnot. Because Mamet's also a big jiu-jitsu guy. He does that in his personal life. But I just love the idea of in that movie, the protagonist is always saying, "There's always an escape. There's always an escape," and that's kind of his philosophy. And I like to think that one of the things that I was taught growing up from my dad, who was a vet in Vietnam, and also my grandfather, who was a Battle of the Bulge guy, you never quit. You never quit. Yeah, my grandfather. He crosses the Siegfried Line, the Rhine River, fights at the Battle of Aachen.
Jeez.
Yeah, man. It's like that quote from Harrison Ford in Raiders. It's not the age, it's the mileage. Like my grandfather had some serious mileage. But
that trip,
never quit, and that whole philosophy of adapt, improvise, overcome. You're never out of the fight. Which is kind of Chris Kyle, but I love this stuff because it also ties into sports. But that's why they went after the NFL. Amanda Milius and I were talking about that not too long ago. They went after the NFL because it's got a military kind of background and sort of philosophy, teamwork 100%. And tactics, and you're always fighting, you never give up. But I love that. I think that's fantastic, and that's good stuff. I think mixed martial arts, Krav Maga, stuff like that for kids today. That's what karate was for us in the 80s. Karate was just huge. Speaking of Cobra Kai, geez.
I think the sports and things are hugely important for all kids, and that's why it's fun. We're making a sports movie too.
Yeah,
because all the lessons are there.
Absolutely. So you guys have already shot you got some principal photography, and then when are you going back into production on this thing?
It looks like in about 3.5 weeks.
Awesome.
Is the aim date right now, and my phone's been ringing as we've been going here, and a lot of messages coming through because they're going, okay, let's go. We need this. And I'm like, you have to hold on. I'm doing an interview, man.
Fantastic. When can we expect this to come out? Do you have kind of a set release date?
Hard to say. Hard to say at this point. It's one of those things that could go real fast. It could take a little time. We'll be done shooting it summertime. And it could, I don't know when we may time it for soccer season or whenever that is for girls soccer season, which I can't remember when that is. But internationally, it's going to have huge appeal because soccer is such a huge sport internationally, and girls soccer is gigantic here. I mean, it's the little world. I've noticed it when I was watching my niece and my goddaughter play. It's like its own little world, and there's all these little worlds that are so familiar to any soccer moms and dads who are out there and the weekend warriors, and it's really fun. But the soccer, I make fun of it because I'm a football coach.
Yeah,
I'm an American. That's what gets him in trouble. It's like because they had a girl kicker try to kick something during the national championship football game. He has a girl kicker go and try to kick a field goal. She shanks an extra point, and she shanks it. So he tosses her off the team and says it was a publicity stunt. And she's a girl and soccer player, and we're in America, and soccer's for girls. That gets him in trouble. He gets suspended. He's got to go to sensitivity seminar. He's got to coach these kids in soccer, and he doesn't like it. And that's the crux of the story. And then he grows to like the kids, and they're the reject team. They're the misfits. Nobody likes them. They're the ones nobody picked on, picked for this, that, or the other thing. And so he's got to turn them into winners. And he teaches them all those lessons along the way.
I love it. I just watched the 76 Bad News Bears last weekend.
Amazing.
I love Billy Bob. Okay. But it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. All right.
Walter Matthau
and Tatum O'Neal and Kelly Leak. That kid, I forget that kid's name. He played Rorschach in Watchmen, but it's amazing how funny that kid is on his Harley Davidson cruising around. He walks up to some he's smoking. It's just insane. Walter Matthau's handing out beers to everybody, and they're toasting and pouring beer on each other's head. And Kelly Leak walks up to some woman in the movie, and he's like, I got a Harley Davidson. You like Harley Davidson? And he's doing this, he's like, does that turn you on? He says that to her. How just only in 76 could you?
Dude, you're 12.
Exactly.
Smoking and try to chat up the lady.
I love it.
But that's great. It's a sign of the times.
It is. It's just, I wish we could get more stuff like that because, the left has just killed comedy. I mean, they've reduced it to basically, kind of like fart humor at this point. That's all you
need to be a comedian today's day and age.
Man, it's tough. It's tough. I follow a guy named Ryan Long on Twitter who's very funny and is always going after the left. I mean, he's one of the guys that's actually brave enough to lampoon the left. And he's hilarious. So it's like there are some guys out there that are very cutting edge. But when it's let's transition into kind of culture war stuff. When it comes to creating entertainment, why is it important for conservatives to make films, TV, comic books, graphic novels, music? Why is it a mistake for us to ignore the culture war within entertainment as conservatives?
Well, because the culture war is, like you said before, politics are downstream from culture, and it's true. You can affect the way people perceive anything by telling a story that's compelling. And if you do a good job with it, and you're not beating them over the head with it, you're instilling lessons, morality, what values, all that stuff is there. And Little Angels, we're doing it quite a bit. I wrote it.
Oh, did you? Okay, so you're writing and directing,
starring in it, everything.
Awesome.
So if it fails, it's all my fault. But the lessons are there that I think are important. They're about teamwork, and it's about being part of the team, and it's about sacrificing a team and how team is like a family and how that's so important. And those are values that I hold dear, and I always have, and it's through life experiences, and I think that's hugely important. And so to be able to tell that story, I'm not proselytizing to the public, but I'm telling a story that I think is a real story and is something that could be inspirational to young girls, young boys, kids, adults, parents. And I think that's important. And are values in there? Yes. Are there values like family is important? Yes. There's values like, you can change your perspective on X, A, B, or C. Yes, of course. Those things are important to give people a fair shake. One of the things I get here in Hollywood all the time is so they're known to be this bastion of liberalism and tolerance, but that's only if you have their point of view. The second you say anything that is different, a difference of opinion, oh my gosh, you're not tolerated at all. They're the most authoritarian, vindictive, angry folks I've ever seen. You express a difference of opinion, oh my gosh, where's the tolerance there? There is no tolerance. It's incredible. They want to cancel you and take away your livelihood. And I won't let that happen.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why it's so important that people like you and me and others, creative conservatives, are out there creating culture. I don't think you can fight a culture war unless you're creating actual culture, actual entertainment. It's the only way we're going to be a robust and strong counterculture. But it's like I said, there's guys like you, me, Nick Searcy, Amanda Milius, Sorbo, Daily Wire's jumping in, Gina Carano, guys like Doug TeNapel out. I mean, there's so many out there. So we have so much talent on our side, which is kind of the most striking thing. And yet we're very unorganized. It's getting better because I'm seeing more and more films and more creative projects from conservatives. But, one of the things I think that, we need to do a better job of is supporting each other. I think cross promotion. I don't see a whole lot of that. And I'm not exactly sure why. There's a lot of lone wolves out there. And I think if we just kind of pool our resources, even from the standpoint of saying, hey, come on my show and let's talk about your project. And then you say, hey, come on my show and we'll talk about your project. Or I'll talk about your show. The left brands everything that they do as cool amongst themselves and then amongst the culture. And we can learn a lot from them. I mean, don't you think?
Absolutely. No question about it. And it is a war of ideas and a war of values and concepts. And, I hear people saying, like Black Lives Matter wants to get rid of the nuclear family. I'm like, what? That is literally the worst possible thing you could do.
Yeah.
Giving government more control over anything to me is a horrible idea. But I think one of the reasons we're not as organized is because it's kind of like that cowboy mentality. You got the cowboy. Cowboy ain't reaching out for a whole lot of help. Cowboy's self-reliant. They're going to do their thing. My dad. The reason my dad made Young Guns is because he's a cowboy.
Yeah.
He grew up riding bulls. He was a bull rider, and he lived on a farm in South Dakota.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there you go. That's where those values come from.
Wow.
And that's why, and those were instilled in me.
And those,
I grew up in Malibu, California, so that was pretty sweet.
But those values that your dad lived are in his movies.
Oh yeah,
very much so. I mean, whether it's The Principal, whether it's that was then, This Is Now, or whether it was Young Guns, he obviously picked projects that spoke to him personally. and something that he could sort of imbue his values in. You do the same thing. I do the same thing. The other thing that I find kind of troubling is one of the biggest problems on our side really is not a lack of talent, lack of ideas, or a lack of necessarily execution when we get the opportunity. It's a lack of funding. I see a lot of money on the right. A lot of people with the money on the right seem to funnel all the money and all their investments into think tanks, white papers, political books, political ads, politicians, but they're not investing in movies, TV, graphic novels, children's books, animation, multimedia. Why is that? And how can we convince the people with the money on the right that hiring guys like you and me to create and do what we do is the most effective way to not only fight, compete, win the culture war, but as I like to point out to them, that we can also turn a profit and make some money.
The only way we can do it is by example. And that's what I'm hoping to do at this point in time, and explain that to people on the right. There's been a lot of people trying to get me to run for office, and there's an awful lot of money that would come flying my way to support my campaign. But I can't raise, a fifth of that to make a movie that might change more minds.
Yeah.
And, that's a hard part. But it's about talking about that and convincing people that that's a way to go, and showing them examples. Trafficked was a good example of a very small movie having a strong effect on a lot of people. And that film had an effect on me. It opened my eyes to a couple of things that I didn't even consider. And I think it's hugely important. So that kind of stuff, you sort of build it. Little Angels would do the same thing. I think some people say that's pretty great. Pureflix did a nice job with, God's Not Dead. It's a film that Kevin and I did. And that made a huge splash, and Pureflix jumped through the roof. And that was great because it wasn't preachy, but it was talking about values and things and stuff. And my character was, of course, the only one who didn't find any redemption whatsoever in that. And my son went to a Christian high school, and they were watching the film, and one of his buddies was like, "Dude, your dad's a jerk." He's like, he's acting, okay?
Yeah, right.
But that kind of stuff is, I think, hugely important. And I think when people start to see that it turns a profit and they like to put their name on it, and it's a positive thing, I think that's important.
I was really pleased with what Daily Wire did. So I found, and I was also really encouraged because you're able to do a whole lot with about $20 million nowadays, whether you're whether it's Run, Hide, Fight, or whether it is Bone Tomahawk and some of S. Craig Zoller's films. M. Night Shyamalan did the Glass for I think about $20 million. I think that's kind of his budget these days. But and it's a lot of money. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not. It is. It's a considerable amount. But it's. I mean, these Hollywood films are $250 million movies. I mean, it's just astronomical. And frankly, you don't really need that amount of money to have a really good looking film these days, because you can shoot it on digital. You're not spending $1,000 a foot on real cellophane.
Yeah,
probably more expensive than that. That's like 10 years ago numbers. But from the red cameras to the digital to the work that the colorists can do in post, you can make these movies look like $100 to $150 million movie. And the only difference is that the movies and the stories that we're telling actually have good messages and interesting stories and compelling characters. So you can do more with less these days. I think that's hugely advantageous to our side as far as building our own entertainment and industry. Because I think, like Nick says, Cersei, that's the only answer at this point, is to build our own.
Yeah, I agree with it wholeheartedly. I mean, and I really, you can make these movies for much less than the 20 million and make them look great. Because at the end of the day, it's a story, and you may have all the special effects in the world, but if you don't care about the characters, you don't care. Yeah. It may look, oh, great, that's a big boom. I've seen all those explosions. I've seen all those things. I've seen the world blow up.
Well, you come from a time, the 90s, where we had very primitive special effects. Lois and Clark. I mean, you're doing a lot of practical stuff.
Probably so much practical, almost all of it.
Probably a little bit of green screen, but probably not much, because the technology and also the cost. It's actually cheaper to do practical stuff. A lot of people don't know that. It's a lot cheaper. Digital's really expensive.
Well, I wrote episodes on Lois and Clark, and one of them that I wrote was a very stunt heavy, effect heavy budget. And then, I was allowed to have 6 blurs. So I had to find my moments where I wanted to use them and things like that. And that's how it worked back in the day. Nowadays, it's gone so far where like all the fight scenes that I had to do, all these they're all digitized now. I mean, there's not real Spider-Man doing these things, and you're like, what? What is that? It just goes up and then he just jumps down, and all you have to do is pull your mask off. I mean, like, what? You don't have to do any work for that. At the end of the day, what's important is the stories that are being told, and we care about the characters. And that's the thing that really matters. We joke about it, and this is one of the jokes, is how do you know a $50 million movie from a $500,000 movie? The size of base camp. And that's about it. All the bells and whistles. At the end of the day, when you're making a movie, and there was a time I was shooting a $50 million movie with Denzel Washington. We had to do some reshoots for some of the stuff at the end. And there was a point in time where we were in this really enclosed area where I'm trying to get away, and he's pulling me back down. It was so tight. There was just me, Denzel, and the director holding the camera. And I was like, this is what it was like. This is what it's like, when you're a kid making a movie. But it's the same, it's the same thing. And that's all it is. That's what filmmaking is. So I love the fact that there's people out there who, there's the technology out there that people can tell their stories. That's one way that I feel like we're not going to be censored, is that someone can just go out and tell a story, shoot it on an iPhone, and the story is compelling. It'll get out there to people. And I think that's important. And I think that's how you stop that crazy censorship stuff that's going on.
Well, and it's allowing conservatives to really go out and create in ways that maybe we couldn't 15 or 20 years ago. I'm doing a lot of crowdfunding, going directly to
Gosnell was crowdfunded.
Exactly. And that's just stuff that it just opens up this huge opportunity for us, where the impetus is on us to create. The platform is there, the resources are there. Are you going to step up and you're going to do it? You're going to man up, you're going to cowboy up, and get in the conservative fight, the culture war, because there's really nothing holding anybody back at this point, which I think is fantastic. If we can get more investment, I think that's going to solve everything, because really, I don't think distribution's our problem right now. I just think that it's getting money into the pipeline to creators where it's not like a onesies, twosies. I'd love to see like a slate of films. I'd love to see you go out and put to work a bunch of conservative Hollywood people for like a year, and I'd like to do the same thing. And frankly, there's enough projects out there that we can do that
easily.
So, and then there's these 75 million people that are completely underserviced, who all have money, who are potential customers. I say to myself, are these money people looking at the demo that is the customer? They want to be entertained too.
Oh, of course. And it's much more than 75 million. That's just 75 million who voted.
Exactly.
There are, of the 330 million people we have here, if you broke it in half, there's a whole lot of people who would enjoy that kind of content. And my job is to go out there and make it, as is yours. And I'm working on it now. I'm literally doing exactly what we're talking about.
I think your model is right. Rather than kind of, bring Muhammad to the mountain, you bring the mountain to Muhammad, and that's what we're doing. We're creating, and then hopefully these, the investors and the people with money will see that and say, hey, I want to be involved in that. This guy's out there putting his money where his mouth is, and he's fighting the culture war, and he's creating great content. Let's team up with that guy, because he's winning.
And that's and they're telling stories that are important. And if you, a lot of people go, I want to get in the film industry, I want to do something, because they want to be involved in the film industry because it's fun and it's exciting. But when you can do something that you support, that you'd be proud for your kids to watch, that's important. That's hugely important. And so it's something you can pass on to, telling a story with a great moral center, a great story to it, a great lesson to be learned, values to be upheld. That's a great legacy to leave here on this earth, as long as you don't just keep it in the cloud, of course. Make sure you get a copy.
Last question for parents out there that have kids, conservative parents, right of center parents. What would you say to them about encouraging their kids to get into the arts, whether it's acting, directing, music, comic books, graphic novels, animation? Should conservative parents be encouraging their kids to get into entertainment?
Oh, absolutely 100%. There is no more effective way for you to tell your story or teach your values than through storytelling. I mean, it's been that way for a millennia, and now you can reach every eyeball on this planet virtually by telling a great story. And if it's the values you want to put out there, do it, because everybody can see it. There is that ability to get it to more eyeballs than ever before in history, and I think that's hugely important. And like I said, it's a legacy for your kids and for your lifetime forever. You make a mark right there. And so definitely encourage your kids to get into the arts, because it's one of the greatest forms of expression there could ever be.
Well, and it's kind of like a friend of mine told me, so I'm ripping this. This is not my quote, but he said, we can't be cultural observers anymore. We have to be cultural creators. Larry Schweikert said, we can't just ignore Hollywood. We can't ignore entertainment. We've got to have a hand in controlling it and creating it. And I think the more that the right pulls out of culture and are not creating the TV and the movies and the comics and all of this stuff which influence, someone else is going to do it. And we've seen what that yields when we allow other people to go out and do that. We don't really like it. I don't like the stories they're telling, and I don't like the effect it has on the culture.
I don't either. But you know what's really strange now? These strong American values, the self-reliance and sort of et cetera, we're now the rebels.
Yes.
And it's a really odd thing, is to be like, that's the rebellious point of view. We're the rebels.
We are. Yeah.
And it's so odd, but things flip around, and that's where we sit now.
Yeah, we're the punks. We're the Ramones. We're the counterculture.
It's crazy.
Dana Loesch said one time that the Constitution was the first punk rock anthem, and I've always thought that the founders were punks. I mean, they were sort of like outlaws and anti-heroes and badasses.
Tremendously. Oh yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's
think of what it took to sign that declaration. I mean, you might be signing your death warrant.
They were. They did.
Yeah.
They pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors. I mean, that's hardcore, man. You want to talk about that's like Outlaw Josie Wales, like words of iron,
Everything.
So it's beautiful stuff. So yeah, I mean, we need more entertainment out there that that speaks to those values and that ethos. And I think that's the kind of movies that you're making. And more power to you, man. That's all I got to say. More power to you.
Well, more power to both of us, and I think we'll be working together in the future. I have a sneaky suspicion.
That'd be awesome. So, well, sadly, we're out of time. I know you got to get back to production and doing your thing. Thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you give everybody your social media coordinates so they know where to find you?
Well, thank you, first of all, Brett. It's been phenomenal and love talking to you. I'm real simple. On Twitter, it's @RealDeanCain, and on Instagram, @Deuces1966.
Okay.
DEUCES 1966. I didn't want to go on Instagram back in the day. My son put me on, and he was like, "Deuces, Dad, deuces." So Deuces 1966. That's me on Instagram. I should probably change it, but I'm lazy. It gives away my age too.
I know. I got 76 in my Twitter handle, so it totally gives away my age. But I did that because it's like I'm a bicentennial baby, so I like to play that up. Yeah.
I remember the bicentennial when you were born.
I am so envious of guys like you who have like 10 to 11 years on me, because you guys all got to experience and have fun in the 80s, which was like the most glorious decade. The 90s were fun, but they were a very cynical period, whereas the 80s was a very hopeful, fun, uplifting, really joyous decade, even though we were still kind of under the threat of the Soviet Union. It was still a huge party, make no mistake. And guys like you, you're like my brother's age, so you were all in your teens during that era, which is, I just can't even imagine the amount of fun you guys had during that time.
It was a lot, and whatever fun you would imagine, I probably had that plus 10.
I was going to say, it was even better. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're hanging out with Brat Pack, so I mean, come on.
I've seen some things.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the mileage.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Hey, everyone, make sure and check out thepoliticalinsider.com and subscribe to our newsletter. Also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Please like and share this video far and wide. Subscribe to the Political Insider channel on Rumble and YouTube so you never miss any of our exciting new videos. And until next time, everyone keep the faith and stay frosty. Dean, thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Brett. Cheers, brother.